Americans as a whole produce over 21 tons of carbon dioxide emissions in a given year. And that's not even counting the other greenhouse gases, which include methane, which comes from animal fecal matter. Global warming affects everyone because we all live on Earth, and if we continue using carbon at the rate that we are now, we will cause another global extinction. This is because every global extinction that's ever occurred came at a spike in CO2. And we are currently now in the biggest spike that the Earth has ever seen. Oceans and forests affect global warming significantly. Oceans are warming at an unbelievably fast rate. How this correlates to us is the oceans control the climate. A good example of this is coral bleaching. This is because when the ocean temperature rises, it can result in the organisms that live on the coral, called zooxanthellae, that keep the coral alive, will expel from the coral, and the coral eventually dies because the zooxanthellae help it get its food. This can happen when the ocean temperature raises by just 12.06 degrees Fahrenheit. That's less than 1 degree Celsius. Oceans are the biggest carbon sink, absorbing about 50% of all carbon that is emitted. Carbon dioxide heats up the Earth, and the carbon sinks help absorb it, along with other greenhouse gases, and control Earth's climate. The problem that the oceans have is the oceans have been filled with way too much CO2 that it can't take anymore because it has its limits. The plankton help a little bit, creating a mini carbon sink in the ocean. This is because plankton, mainly green plankton, needs CO2 to survive, absorbing the CO2 and creating oxygen. This process is called photosynthesis, but it can only do so much. The plankton start a biological pump in the ocean, because when they die, the carbon reaches the seafloor and will stay there and will remain on the seafloor for thousands of years. Forests have been a major carbon sink, absorbing about 25% of all carbon and other greenhouse gases, but even this has its limits. If the forests absorb too much carbon dioxide, then it would start causing fires, like what's happening in California. And the Pacific. But grasslands could save the day, because unlike trees, grasslands store most of its carbon in the soil and the roots. When they burn, the carbon tends to stay in the roots and or the soil. But the current drought that we're in, however, dries out the roots, making it easier for the carbon inside the roots to escape. Another really important plant is green plants, because they control the CO2 emissions by a process called photosynthesis, which I talked about earlier. Central America has been able to sustain a stage of carbon neutrality by planting specific species of trees that are native to Central America. The trees have the potential to hold more carbon than the current trees that are growing now. Next, I'm going to be talking about the carbon cycle. About how the carbon cycle works. First, the carbon and other greenhouse gases, namely carbon, methane, nitrous oxide, and water vapor, get produced by factories, animals, cars, and natural disasters like fires. After it gets produced, then the carbon goes into the atmosphere where the greenhouse gases get trapped because they're too thick to exit the atmosphere. After getting trapped, the greenhouse gases get absorbed by the carbon sinks, namely oceans, forests, and grasslands, and sediments. Carbon gets trapped in the forests and plankton to produce CO2, and is transformed from CO2 in those two ecosystems. Then after the excess carbon, the excess carbon, which is the carbon that is left behind that hasn't been absorbed by the carbon sinks, goes back into the atmosphere where it is joined with all the other carbon that has been created in the time span that it's taken it to go through the carbon sinks. Why we need carbon sinks. We need the carbon cycle to run smoothly without a hiccup because the carbon cycle works with a bunch of positive and negative feedback loops that keep the world at a constant temperature. When it is out of sync, the carbon cycle doesn't do its job, and the Earth experiences a cold spike, or in this case, a rapid heat spike. In our lifetime, the world as we know it is going to be very different because of the Earth will be warming, that will be so warm that there will be no coral, which is the basis of life in the ocean, and the Earth will be on fire because of all the excess CO2 on the Earth. And it's not too late to do your part.